Hello there, my name is Samuel Shelley, and today I'll be presenting the 3 artifact concepts that I came up with for my senior project this year. The first is a sequel to the first Unity game that I ever made at UF, Boomstick. It was built in Unity and was very simple, and it was inspired by Nightmare Tower shown on the left here. Recently I've become interested in returning to it and doing the concept proper justice and separating it farther away from its original material. So in this sequel, I would want to add multiple attack moves, unique enemy types, at least a couple of them, a more coherent speed and fuel system, and a simple shop for upgrades between runs to help provide more engagement and reason for the player to give it a shot more than once. The player's goal is simple: travel as far as possible. A dying star is quickly expanding, and the only way that you are going to survive it is by killing the wizards who are also trying to escape it. If you run out of too much speed or run out of health, you will perish, but you will collect currency that can be spent on character upgrades between runs. These upgrades can improve your agility, how durable you are, as well as upgrading the almighty Boomstick. The Boomstick was the only weapon available to you in the original game, but I would like to add a couple of other normal attacks and reserve the Boomstick as a special item that you would occur only on occasion during this game. The average run should take about 3 to 5 minutes, but it is expected that the player will make multiple attempts. So the primary challenge here is going to be the finer details of gameplay, such as how to offer engaging combat without making the game too challenging or making it too easy. Skill should be a big factor in Boomstick 2, but I don't want the game to be solvable in just a few runs. I want mastery to take some time. But ultimately, I want Boomstick 2 to far outdo its predecessor and actually be rewarding to play. If you couldn't tell by this point, I'm pretty passionate about this concept, and I think it would be fitting to graduate from UF to this sequel of the first game that I ever made here. I'll be delivering a playable video game in the form of an EXE, and I give the risk factor about a low to a medium. I'm not too worried about programming or art, I'm really worried about the balancing of the game overall. My next artifact concept is Guns for Eyes, so this is probably the strangest idea that I have out of the 3 here. This concept is based upon a side-scrolling game of the same name that I made a few years ago, but I have sadly lost the original project, featuring a cute little Wall-E-like design with 2 guns for his eye sockets. I'd like to revisit this concept and combine it with my recent fascination with weird Japanese shooters like Choaniki and PS1 style graphics, both of which are displayed here. This time, however, I would like to make this a whole lot more bizarre in tone, starting with replacing the little robot with a disembodied head, who is very confused and terrified about what's happening, with 2 surgically implanted guns for his eyes instead. I think it would be very entertaining if the overall tone of this game is what is going on, and I feel like chaos is the best way to go for this project. The game itself, of course, will be quite simple, featuring a modest selection of different weapons for the player to use, and a small selection of simple enemies for the player to shoot down, just as most shoot-em-ups do. I'm confident I can create all these mechanics, but the visuals are my main concern for this project. I typically create 2D games, but I would really like to pursue a 3D look for this project, particularly combined with a special shader that I got from the Unity Asset Store called PSX Effect, which converts the 3D visuals into a retro PS1 style, like the picture shown on the right here. If the 3D visuals turn out to be too much hassle early on in the project, or it's decided that it will be best to simply pursue 2D graphics anyway, I will just do that. Guns for Eyes will feature just a single, very chaotic level that will take about 5 to 10 minutes to complete, but it will be quite long and ideally end in a final boss. The final boss will likely be the most challenging part of the whole project, and I may need to forego having one in favor of having more polished gameplay and visuals. If I have the time, I would also like to add simple upgrades and possibly a couple of other weapon types. I really like this idea. It's riskier than the others I have here, but I think it would really stand out on my portfolio if I can pull it off. Overall, I am very passionate about this idea, but I would give the risk factor a medium-high, considering that although I'll be able to handle things mechanically, the graphics and the final boss might give me some trouble. The final artifact concept that I have is Smackaroni, so as the ongoing theme is, this is based upon a previous game that I've done. Smackaroni was a text-based game that I developed in Java, featuring a simple turn-based combat system, endless generated enemies, and multiple perks and upgrades. To say it was bare bones was an understatement, but I've always wondered what it would look like as a proper game with actual graphics and sounds. Much like its predecessor, it will feature a lineup of Asian cuisine, similar in design to Turnip Boy here. The player must defeat them with their chopsticks, ultimately consuming them before they are inevitably consumed themselves. Each run will be technically infinite, but it's similar to Boomstick 2, it will grow more difficult over time, and the average run should take about 10 to 15 minutes. The player is tasked with surviving as long as possible in this cuisine dungeon by making strategic decisions, balancing risk and reward, and most importantly, obtaining powerful skills and perks, which will be the cornerstone of this whole experience. Smackaroni is going to be more intensive mechanically than graphically, as turn-based games tend to be, but the main challenge overall will be balance. A lot of fine-tuning is going to be needed to make sure that it is fair and fun enough to be playable more than once. I believe the refinement stage of development is where this game will really start to shine, but I anticipate that it will be evolving quite a bit during development. It should be pretty easy to create a minimum viable product with this concept, which means I have quite a bit of legroom in terms of stretch goals. I could add abilities, upgrades to those abilities, maybe even a full dungeon experience if it turns out to be a lot easier than I expect. I have a fair amount of interest in this idea. I would need to play around with the concept some more to be really passionate for it, but it should be the simplest to execute out of the three, so I give it a risk factor of low. Thank you for watching this presentation, and be sure to let me know what your thoughts are on these concepts.